From the European Parliament here in Brussels, this is Raw Politics. Thank you for joining us tonight, and this is what we have on the program. Orban offensive. Hungary's leader hopes EU elections bring an anti-immigration majority to parliament. Shameful standoff. Aid groups slam an ad hoc agreement to distribute migrants stranded at sea for weeks. Spanish kingmaker as Andalusia swings right, the role of the Vox party and other kingmakers. MEP parachutes. Why British politicians could receive thousands of euros a month after the UK leaves. And Photoshop fail. The internet busts and then mocks Australia's Prime Minister over some fake trainers. All right, it is time to meet our panelists for tonight. We have Sándor Zsiros. He is a Euronews reporter with the Hungarian service. Sándor, which of the stories are you watching closely? I think I can guess.
It's obvious. For me, every day is Orban's day.
Every day is an Orban day. Today it is big news, in fact. All right, and joining us as well today is Linnea Engström. She is a Swedish MEP with the Greens and sits with the Greens EFA group here in Brussels. So, Linnea, which one are you watching closely?
I mean, that sounds terrifying. Every day is an Orban day. That's horrible. But I have to say, well, Orban then as well, and then migration, of course, that's the main thing that we have to solve right now. Yeah.
The biggest issue, and indeed very related stories. All right, Tonight also is Christina Winberg joining us. She's a Swedish MEP. She represents the Sweden Democrats and sits with the ECR in Parliament. Christina, which of the stories are you watching?
Yeah, I'm of course watching what's Viktor Orban saying, and I'm also following what's happening with migration issues.
All right. Well, all three guests are focusing on our main story. We will start with Viktor Orban in Hungary, because the Prime Minister held a rare and lengthy press conference today, and he certainly did not hold back. Now, Viktor Orban is not exactly a friend to Brussels. He set out his goal of achieving an anti-immigration majority at the European Parliament and other EU institutions. Now, he also praised anti-EU collaborations, branding Italy's Matteo Salvini his hero. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
Hogy az Európai Unió minden intézmény rendszerében, illetve intézményrendszerén belül minden intézményben kerüljenek többségbe a bevándorlás ellenes erők. Első lépésként kerüljenek többségbe a bevándorlás ellenes erők az Európai Parlamentben, majd néhány hónappal később kerüljenek többségbe a bizottságban, és aztán a későbbiekben a nemzeti parlamenti választások eredményeképpen azt szeretnénk, ha többségbe kerülnénk az Európai Tanácsban is. A migrációt szárazföldön meg lehet állítani. És hosszú időn keresztül egyetlen tengeri ország sem vállalkozott hasonló tettre. És az, hogy Salvini úr megjelent a kormánypolitikában, és ő az első európai politikus, aki azt mondta, hogy tengeren is meg lehet állítani a migrációt, ez tette őt hőssé az én szememben. Olasz, illetve Varsó-Róma tengely. Ez a legnagyszerűbb fejlemények egyike, amivel az év egyáltalán elkezdődhetett. Úgyhogy én nagy reményeket fűzök ehhez.
All right, what is Viktor Orban trying to achieve here? It almost sounds like a rallying cry. What was his goal, Sándor, with this kind of speech and rhetoric?
I think he sent a clear message to Brussels that we are coming and we want to take it over. We want to take over the institutions. And it was also a clear warning towards the EPP, European People's Party. He said that Manfred Weber was misled when he was voting for the Article 7 resolution against Hungary. And he said that the EPP should look not to the liberals, but to the right, to Salvini and Kaczynski in the future. So I think that this was a clear warning for the central powers of EPP that I'm the main player now in the game. I will come to Brussels, we will have a good results, and you have to follow me, not kick me out from the EPP, but you have to follow me in this anti-immigration road.
All right, a warning from Viktor Orban. Christina, I'll go to you. You're from the Sweden Democrats. Do you think Viktor Orban is onto something when he's calling for an anti-immigration majority in the EU?
Yeah, maybe, but because we can see now a lot of countries, member states had enough because we have this mass immigration and we cannot handle the situation. And now with the Dublin reform and that they want to force member states to take a quota of migrants, that people raise they don't want that. So I think a lot of political parties is going to grow and be bigger and have maybe majority in the parliament.
Linnea, you were shaking your head. What do you think about what's happening?
What a dreadful man, what a dreadful speech. This is just populist mishmash.
Isn't he right, though?
No, I mean, this is just populist mishmash. Fear-mongering, I would say. If we are serious with tackling climate change, we will see that this is a problem that we will have to solve. And the solution is never to close any borders. These are people.
But
these are children, women and men, just like us. And they belong to our societies as well. I mean, and he is not offering any solutions at all. I mean, this is not an issue that we can just shut out. I mean, or to solve with closing borders and then putting up some camps outside of Europe. No, that's not possible. We have to, have a strategy, have a plan, and we have to have it now.
I mean, that's interesting because is it fear-mongering when you have parties getting voted into parliament?
Absolutely, and you can see inside of Hungary that it works actually. He has a two-third majority, and his only message is migration, 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 and Soros. This is what you hear in the Hungarian media, and you can see that it works perfectly. But actually, the picture in Europe is a bit more difficult than black and white, anti-immigration or for migration. We have lots of different issues where
But definitely migration topping that list, because just as Viktor Orban has called for unity among Europe's anti-immigration parties, well, the EU and Malta have struck a deal to relocate 49 migrants stranded at sea, along with more than 200 others who were in limbo. The migrants were allowed to disembark 2 German rescue boats yesterday. Negotiations had stretched on for weeks, highlighting a lack of solidarity, and in the end, just 9 countries agreed to accept them. Germany and France will take the majority. Portugal, Ireland, Romania, Luxembourg, the Netherlands and Italy will take between 5 and 20 each. Here's the EU's migration commissioner.
The European Union is about human values and solidarity. And if human values and solidarity are not upheld, then it is not Europe. At the Commission, we spared during the last days no efforts to coordinate relocation pledges among member states and make the disembarkation possible.
All right, it took weeks to get to this agreement, to get a few countries, to get a handful of people. Some will get 5. I mean, is this what it has come to in Europe?
Yeah, apparently, but it's shameful. And we can do better, and we have to do better, and we can do more. I mean, I think the European Commission here is showing leadership. What is this union about if it's not about values? And these are what mass immigration? It's women and children and men, just like us. And they need a place to stay. And we are rich countries. We can handle it. There is no crisis going on. 49 people is no crisis. I mean...
You were talking, but... I just want to point out to you that the numbers of immigration, of people coming into Europe in general, it is actually much lower than when the crisis started. So why this reaction?
Yes, because I think we have seen now a clear message from Italy and Malta that they don't have the possibility to take more migrants. And I think this could be a good thing. That can be that people are not going out on this boat with smugglers. And from my side, I want to have a reception center in the North Africa, really helping these refugees and really clear out who are the refugees or who are the economic migrants. No more death on the sea, like in Australia.
Have you been to the northern of Africa? Have
you been there?
I've been there. Have you been standing in Niger when it's 50 degrees Celsius in the daytime? Have you done that?
Yeah, I have been.
So you know that it might be quite difficult for people to live in these countries. And then they move, and then they migrate. And they will have to do that due to climate change. And we will have to help them.
Yeah, but if we are going to help all these refugees and migrants, what's happening?
That's people. That's children, women and men, just like you and me.
I think
and of course we can help them.
Yeah.
We're people, right?
Yeah.
We are built on values, and we can do much, much more.
Yeah, but instead of helping helping one person in Sweden, we can help 10 person in Africa.
In 50, 60 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, but
have
what
you
should we
been
do?
there without
should we
water?
move the whole Africa's people to Europe then?
We have to help them, of course. We have to do something more.
These are two sides of an argument, but the reality is how the EU is dealing with it right now is here. You have a few hundred people coming and it takes weeks to discuss. Is the system broken then?
I mean, it has to. I mean, I agree with Christina here. I don't think it's sustainable that Italy or Greece or Malta should take all this.
But you don't agree with that solution?
No, I mean, we want a solidaric system where, you know, all countries in the union take the responsibility. And my country, Sweden, has taken a lot of responsibility when we see that people have to flee or migrate.
So much.
So, of course, I mean, we also, I mean, I work with fisheries and I see really how we have to stop overfishing in order to help people sustain themselves on a local level in Africa, for example. So, I mean, we need green policies as well, of course. But
I just want to go back to Viktor Orban's speech again on migration and what he would probably be thinking, watching how the EU is now dealing with this new migration crisis.
He wants a complete stop. He said that Salvini shows that you can even close the sea when it comes to migration. But coming back to this thing with the ships, I think the European Commission should have proposed this kind of solution 3 years ago, not now. Because what they did for 3 years is clearly not working. Mandatory relocation is not working. It's completely clear that solidarity cannot be mandatory. If some countries want to take refugees, that's fine, they take it. The others should have the possibility to help in another way.
Well, clearly a solution is still not in sight or very clear for the European Union on this topic. All right, we'll have to move on. Coming up on Raw Politics, not an MEP, no worries. The post-Brexit payouts British MEPs are in line for after the UK leaves. That is coming up. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, as the UK Parliament inches closer to Tuesday's Brexit vote, all eyes track north of Westminster to Yorkshire, where opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn announced what he plans to do in the event that Theresa May's deal is struck down. Our UK correspondent Vincent McAviney was at that press conference in Yorkshire. Vincent, what exactly is Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader, calling for?
Good evening, Tessa. Well, Jeremy Corbyn swapped Westminster, where that debate is still going on the Brexit deal, for Wakefield today when he came here to give a speech calling on the Prime Minister to call a general election. He said that she should put her deal to the voters and that if Labour won, he would be able to strike a better deal with the European Union that would have frictionless trade into the single market. So some big claims there. Now, she is not going to do that. So Jeremy Corbyn is looking at all of the scenarios which might play out next week. The Prime Minister is still expected to lose the vote on her withdrawal agreement on Tuesday night, and then he says that all options would be on the table, but one in particular he will be going after: a vote of no confidence in the government. Here's what he had to say.
Labour will table a motion of no confidence in the government at the moment we judge it to have the best chance of success. Clearly, Labour does not have enough MPs at the moment in Parliament to win a confidence vote on its own. So members across the House should vote with us to break the deadlock. This paralysis cannot continue. Uncertainty is putting people's jobs and livelihoods at risk. And if a general election cannot be secured, and we'll try, then we'll keep all options on the table, including the option of campaigning for a public vote. But an election must be and is the priority.
Now, two important things to note about that section of his speech. The first is on the vote of no confidence. He admitted he doesn't have the votes in the Commons with his own party and the opposition parties to get it over the line and trigger a general election by toppling Theresa May. He would have to get some of the Conservative MPs who have been rebelling this week to defeat the government on board with that. Whether or not they would go as far as to topple their own government, well, it's unclear. And on that last part where he mentioned a second referendum, this is something that within the polling of his own party, many of them want to have a second referendum or a people's vote. It's something that his Brexit secretary, Sir Keir Starmer, has been keen on. He forced it onto the party's platform at their conference, but Jeremy Corbyn himself still not that warm to the idea. He would rather try and seize power, and he did when he was challenged on whether or not he'd have to pause Article 50, sort of admit that he would have to revoke it in order for more negotiation time with the EU.
All right, thank you for that. Our correspondent Vincent McAviney reporting there. All right, joining me to discuss this, our political editor at Euronews, Darren McCaffrey. We have Politico's reporter Maya Delabom and Nina Gill, British Labour MEP with the Socialists and Democrats group. All right, I'll start with you, Nina. You're with Labour. Do you agree with what Jeremy Corbyn wants to happen?
Well, clearly that's been a Labour Party policy strategy for some months, that we want to have a general election because there are a lot of issues that do need to be addressed. But we're not ruling out any of the options. And clearly, if we cannot get a general election, as your reporter rightly said, that basically we don't have the majority to get a vote of no confidence. If we don't get that, clearly a public vote is something we would consider. And I would say that, Labour essentially is a pro-EU party and want to make sure that we stay as closely aligned to the European Union.
Is it clear, so Jeremy Corbyn would campaign to remain in that referendum, would he?
I believe...
I asked him last month in Lisbon, and he wouldn't say how he would campaign.
Well, he has said he would campaign to remain. He has campaigned...
He said he would campaign for a people's vote, but when asked how he would campaign in that referendum, he's not been terribly clear.
Well, I believe, he has been very engaged with the European family, much more engaged than many other previous leaders, in being at all the socialist family events. And I think, essentially, he sees us in many ways to remain as close to the European Union as we can.
Right. If we can
I think he will campaign to remain.
Well, if we read between the lines then, Darren, what do you think? What is the end game for Jeremy Corbyn? What does he want out of this?
Well, the problem for Labour is quite difficult, and it is why this has been a divisive issue as much for Labour almost as it has been for the Conservative Party, not least of all because at the last election, Labour stood on a manifesto in which they said that they would leave the European Union, they would fulfil the result of the referendum.
But that was fulfil the result of the referendum.
Yes, that was what, in June of 2017, and that they would leave the single market and the customs union. They campaigned on that manifesto. Labour did surprisingly well in that election. But the top 10 Labour constituencies, top 10 Remain constituencies of Labour in the UK, and the top 10 Leave constituencies in the UK are also Labour. And there is a big divide between the party membership, many of whom want a second referendum, and many Labour voters, particularly where Jeremy Corbyn was today in Wakefield and across the north of England, who want to leave. So Jeremy Corbyn's having to play a very, very, very difficult political game here. Labour are as divided on this issue, its voters and its members as the Conservative Party are.
A quick comment from you, Maya, before we move on to a piece actually that you had written. So, what do you read into Corbyn's move today?
I think in the EU, because I work in the EU, there's a lot of miscomprehension, and we don't always understand exactly what Jeremy Corbyn stands for and where his pro-Europeanness is.
Hence the question of where he would stand. Yeah.
Yes, that's the feeling we have here in the Parliament.
Okay, last word on this.
I was just going to say, I think Jeremy is an internationalist at the end. He believes that we work with Europe. He's not anti-European as such. He has issues with certain elements of, let's say, EU legislation, but he's not anti-EU.
But it's not always very clear. It's not always very clear. I think for people who don't live in the UK or for Europeans in general, it's not.
And he thinks to a degree that the European Union is a capitalist club that stops government from giving state aid to particular industries. Clearly, what Jeremy Corbyn would like to do with the UK, which is nationalise entire industries and invest government money in, would contravene EU rules. Hence why he's not the biggest fan of the European Union.
We're going to leave the UK for now and move over to this side, because there is a mystery here, and it's over what British MEPs will actually walk away with post-Brexit. It is a payout that could see some bringing home more than 150,000 euros. And this is a piece that you wrote, Maya. And let's take a look at the numbers now, as revealed by Maya de la Bombe. So it is, MEPs are going to get 8,611 euros per month for up to 2 years. That's depending on the length of service. They can get half of their expenditure allowance for 3 months, and they are entitled to medical expenses and other benefits. All right, Maya, let's talk about this, because this is the payout that MEPs do get, regardless of where they're from, right, when they leave.
Every single MEP, every single departing MEP gets it. There's no special treatments for British MEPs. It's called an end-of-term allowance, and it's under Parliament rules. It means that once you leave the European Parliament, you get your current salary depending on the length of your mandate. If you've worked 20 years in the Parliament, you will get your salary for 20 months. But that's how it's calculated.
I guess what's controversial, or what the question here is, if you wanted to leave the EU, would you actually take that money?
That's exactly.
I think that's the question you put to Nigel Farage.
Exactly. Because who's going to benefit from this?
Who's going to get the biggest package? But I think the important point here is that this package is available to all MEPs, right? Whether you are British or non-British. So I think it's slightly misleading to say this is just for British MEPs. It is like in any organisations, you get a package if you're made like a redundancy, you know. But I think if there are issues about the package, that has to be a separate thing to British MEPs.
Would you like MEPs who campaign to leave to not avail of that package?
I think if they had an ounce of integrity, they should, because they're the ones who have been fighting for, 20 plus years to get UK out, and then they are going to be the biggest beneficiaries of the system, which is there to also, say, protect MEPs who quite often don't have anything else to go to. It's not such an easy, it depends from country to country.
I think most people watching would like a redundancy package, irrespective of whether you're British or not, where you get 8,000 euros a month, up to what's
pre-tax,
3,000 in terms of allowances for a couple of months. You still get your medical expenses. I thought the best thing about your story was that you have to hand in your laptop, your pass, but you get to
15 boxes. 15 boxes.
You
that
still
you can
keep to keep your badge as a memento, though. So
well, I've been there once, so I know what it's like. I know what it's like. So get those bags, the boxes home. And
while we're talking about payouts here and redundancy packages, well, things are not going so well in the UK, because there's been, no shortage of economic warnings related to Brexit. We know that. And there's more bad news today economically. Jaguar, Land Rover and Ford are announcing thousands of job cuts. And the numbers are in on the holiday sales in the UK, the worst December for retail sales since the financial crisis a decade ago. That does sound grim. Now, sales fell by 0.7 of a percentage point from last year. And with the threat of a no-deal Brexit, CEOs are warning of further damage to come. All right, Airbus's CEO Tom Enders said at an event yesterday, he said, what we and many other British businesses need most urgently is for politicians from all sides to come together and pass a pragmatic agreement that allows an orderly Brexit. And he also said, we don't see any specific benefits in the current deal. It's just a lot less bad than a no deal. All right, looking at those numbers, Maya, what do you think? This is a warning. It's a dire warning from the industry. This is a sign of what is to come.
I think so, but I'm not sure I'm the best person to comment about this, because I look at things here in the EU, and there's a lot of contingency planning here being done. The UK, clearly the impact will be very tough, but I think
Nina, you're worried about
that.
I mean, Jaguar Land Rover is in my constituency in the West Midlands, and this is where they employ the largest number of employees. So
it's
clearly,
almost 5,000
I am very,
jobs.
very concerned on the impact on our region. Which really needs to maintain these jobs. And frankly, what worries me is that the government has not been taking these issues up seriously when industry was saying this 2 years back, it was just ignoring those concerns. They were saying, if we don't have certainty, there will be consequences. What's worse is that the government has even said that these industries have to not just talk about redundancies in terms of Brexit. So this is why everybody has to cage it in a way that there is a downturn, there is something else, but let's not beat about the bush. So the implications of this are directly related to Brexit.
We don't know that, and that's the problem, because actually...
Well, we've had a slowdown in our economy for the last...
But is this the short-term pain?
Well, first of all, all European
economies... We don't know whether the pain is a short-term or a long-term.
Pretty much most European economies have seen a slowdown over the last year or so, and the UK is not exempt of that. Clearly, there is uncertainty. I have no doubt that Brexit is part of that. However, those announcements today on cars, and it was not just Jaguar Land Rover, it was also Ford, and it was across Europe, and it's got more to do with falling... It's got more to do with falling car sales and diesel emissions than it has got to do with Brexit. And on the high street and Christmas sales, again, consumer confidence, yes, is waning, but the high street is suffering because the UK, unlike many other European nations, spend a lot of money online. In fact, the UK population spend more money online per head than any other country in the world.
That's a difficulty in
but
economics.
Even online retailers have suffering.
No, so
you can't actually just say it's just the high street.
I don't think you can put down all the economic woes to Brexit. We don't know that yet. We don't know. And clearly some of the worst predictions made about Brexit, particularly before the referendum, have not come through. The UK has not gone into recession.
Because there were
Unemployment
action taken
is up, not done.
There was action taken to prevent the effects of Brexit. I mean, Brexit fears are post-Brexit. We haven't had Brexit. We're still in the EU. So it is the uncertainty that is leading to the economic slowdown. We do not know how we are going to be exiting from the EU as such. And that, for a country that has been looking at it for 2.5 years, is really quite a shocking state to be in. We should have a plan. We should know how we are going to be. But that is having an economic impact. I talk to businesses all the time, and they say to me, we're putting off any investment decision.
Why is employment in the UK up 700,000 since June 2016?
Well,
people are recruiting more people than they've ever done. Employment in the UK is at a record high. So clearly there is uncertainty, but not that much uncertainty.
Well, I think what we both can agree on is that there's a lot of the consumer is showing it by not spending money. So if they were confident, they would be buying houses, they would be buying online, and they'd be buying in the high street. So I don't agree with that.
Wait and see. All this uncertainty surrounding Brexit. All right, first, let's switch gears now. Let's turn to Australia, really far, where a Photoshop fail has left the Prime Minister red-faced. Let's take a look at this story. Meet Scott Morrison, Australia's Prime Minister who took office last year.
Our plan, my plan for this country, is for an even stronger Australia. To keep our country together.
Well, it seems he succeeded in bringing the country together, although not in the way he might have hoped. This is a photograph from the PM's website, which everyone in Australia is talking about. Nothing much to see, just a traditional family photo. Well, take a closer look and you'll spot that Australia's leader appears to have 2 left feet, thanks to a Photoshop job which looks like it might just have been done on a shoestring. As the snap went viral, the original image surfaced, revealing a pair of rather scruffy trainers. Unfazed, Scott Morrison put his best foot forward, insisting that he did not request the touch-up, and joked that his staff should have focused their efforts on his lack of hair. And now, thanks to one creative tweeter, we know what the whole Australian government would look like if they followed their leader's style. One thing's for sure, you wouldn't want to be in Scott Morrison's shoes right now. like to comment on that? You were all snickering and laughing.
I think it's a reminder that sometimes you can overdo the PR. Having dirty shoes is not a bad thing, is it?
Yeah, and he said, come on, you could have put more hair on me.
I love the hashtag shoegate.
Yeah.
It was great.
Oh, yeah, that went viral, indeed. All right, on that note, we'll be back after a short break. We'll head to Spain, where after 4 decades of socialist rule, there's a right-wing party in power now. That's coming up after the break. Welcome back to our politics. Now, after 4 decades of socialist rule, there are 2 right-wing parties that have come together to rule in Spain's most populous region, and that's thanks to the support of Vox, a far-right party that now wields a lot of power after unexpectedly winning seats in an election late last year. Vox agreed to give its support to the Conservative People's Party and the centre-right Ciudadanos if they agreed to tackle illegal immigration, reduce taxes, and combat Islamic fundamentalism. Here is Vox's Secretary General, Javier Ortega.
Pierden las leyes liberticidas, hoy pierde la inmigración ilegal, hoy pierde la corrupción, hoy pierden los chiringuitos, hoy pierde la administración paralela y hoy ganan los andaluces, gana el empleo, gana la defensa de la familia.
Talk about this in the studio. I'm joined by Jorge Valero. He's a correspondent with Euractiv and El Economista. We also have Ana Miranda. She is a Spanish MEP with the Greens at EFA Group, and our political editor back with us, Darren McCaffrey. All right, I'll start with you, Jorge. Is this the end of an era? I mean, this is a change in Andalusia. Is this the beginning of a new trend in that region?
Well, for sure, this is the end of an era because for the first time, as you said, there is a change of power, which I think everybody will agree with is healthy because for 36 years, the socialist government was ruling in Andalusia. A new trend, it's
you think it's a good thing?
It's a good thing that there is a change of power, of course, because the parties need to alternate because otherwise there is a risk that some corruption cases or some clientelism could spread as it happened, for example, in Andalusia. And second part of your question, whether this is the beginning of a trend, it's still to be seen because for sure the eruption of Vox has shaken the Spanish politics. We were considered as almost the last member state without a far-right party. This is no longer the case. Next year, we will have local, regional, European elections and maybe also national elections. So for sure, what we need to see is whether Vox could capitalize this small momentum and keep growing.
In fact, let's find out. Let's cross now to Madrid to give us more insight on this. We have Ivan Espinosa, the head of international relations with Vox. All right, now that the Vox is in this position, what is the plan? How is the party going to capitalize on this kingmaker position that it has?
Well, hi, Tessa, first of all. Second of all, I'd like to start off by saying, I don't consider that it's a fair label to say that we're a far-right party. I've many times heard that, Spain is the exception, the only country without a far-right party in Europe. That's been shaken now. Well, no, that's not the case. Spain is still the only country, one of the few countries in Europe without a far-right party. What happens is Spain was the only country where everybody was a social democrat. And so anybody who comes along and starts questioning social democrats in Spain is considered, of course, far-right. That's just not the case here. Now, as to Vox's plans, I think they're very clear. We have a very clear agenda. We've been talking about it for last few weeks here in Spain, and we're going to be supporting a government which we're not going to be a part of, which we're going to be auditing very closely, which we're going to be watching very closely to make sure that they put in practice at least the ideas that have been agreed with us that will be put in practice. For instance, we will be helping lower taxes. We'll be supporting families. We will be making sure that immigration takes place according to the rule of law, not just people coming over with no rights whatsoever and just showing up and staying here forever. We will be making sure that there's less political spending and more spending on the things that people are actually asking for: better education, greater freedom on the side of families.
All right,
to
so
decide which schools their children will be taken to.
Will you use your position to stop any progress on something you do not like? You think you're going to use that to your advantage quite a lot then?
Well, of course, we'll be using all the power we have to the advantage of the 400,000 people who voted for us in Andalusia, to the advantage of the ideas that we're upholding. That's very clear. We don't expect to have all of our agenda being put in place. We only came in fifth. We don't have the power to put the whole agenda in place. We're not going to be part of the government. But the government has committed to a certain number of things with us, which will be making, very sure that they're put in practice.
Yeah, very quickly, did you have to backtrack on, Vox's wanting to repeal domestic violence legislation? Also, so that was one of the main things that it was put forward. Did you have to backtrack on that one?
No. What we see in Spain is a huge advance of the gender ideology in general, and a huge defeat, or has been happening, huge defeat for the families. What we have been supporting and always will be supporting is families versus gender ideology. I think we're being very helpful to supporting families in Andalusia, and we will be even more helpful in the future in the rest of Spain, defeating a gender ideology, which is doing a lot of damage to Spanish families and families in the Western world in general.
Ivan, Darren here. Can I just ask a quick question? You say you're not a far-right party. Do you support Marine Le Pen in France?
We don't support anybody outside of Spain. Our focus is in Spain. We have no religion.
So your leader didn't go campaigning for Marine Le Pen?
No, our leader's never been campaigning for anybody else outside of Spain. But just so you know, Darren, we've been meeting with people in Europe from different parties. We've been meeting with people from, the Conservatives in the UK. Do you consider that far right? We've been seeing people from, the Poles who are in government. The Peace, is that far right? Maybe it is. I don't know. We've been seeing people from the PBE. We've been seeing people from the ECR. Those are considered far right, then fine, we'll be far right. But that's not what we are.
All right, thank you for that, Ivan Espinosa, for joining us and giving us Vox's point of view. Anna, maybe you can react to what Ivan was saying.
Yes, he said that they don't support Marine Le Pen, but Marine Le Pen write a tweet the same day of the elections and also yesterday with the support. To the new president. I think they are very far right wing political party. I think they are really a danger for women, for LGBTI persons, because the declarations are really extremely right-wing in the sense of democracy. They have a conditionality on democracy, but also in subjects as the historical memory. They are abolish the general direction of historical memory. And they began yesterday with the mention to Federico García Lorca. Federico García Lorca is still on the earth, and we don't know where he is. And it's quite impact speaking about a person. So also in the rights, also in the education, in this question of ideology. What is ideology? Is the left or the center ideology? They are against that?
But so I think going back to your point on, okay, this is a good thing that there's change, but at the same time, they do have the power with their 12 seats to not allow any progress on certain maybe democratic issues or, that's a danger.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what it's a danger is to, let's say, let some parties to condition the national agenda or the regional agenda in this case, when the minimum consensus when it comes to equal rights or the protection of certain communities, the LGBTI community, or gender violence.
Migration.
And also, I think migration is becoming, it's already a very hot issue in Europe.
The main port, I think, is Andalusia, right?
Yes, it's the rival.
And it's true that last year Spain became the main entrance with 50,000.
I think what I understand about Vox and why it makes it interesting, you're right, it seems to be part of this wider populist movement across Europe, focusing on migration, which is becoming a bigger issue in Spain because it's become the main thoroughfare now for migrants into Europe. And it plays very much on that cultural, historical reference that we see elsewhere in Europe. In Spain, it's on Catholicism and on history. But also, my sense is that one of the reasons they've done well in Andalusia is because of the Catalan, Basque issue, that it is a Spanish issue. And obviously, given what's happened to the Popular Party on corruption, there's been an element of that. So, as always with these things, Tessa, it's, yes, part of a wider European trends, particularly on those issues of kind of cultural nationalism and migration, but also with local national issues at play as well.
All right, Ivan has been listening, actually. He wants to come back and respond. So, Ivan, you can respond to what you've been hearing. Are you there?
And one of the things I'd like to respond, which I've heard of, is that we're a danger for democracy. I mean, it's just appalling that people would sit down in that sofa, including you, Tessa, by the way, and just say those words. Why would a political party that has a support of 400,000 people, that's been supporting not just democracy, but the constitution in Spain, be considered a danger or a threat for democracy. You know who's a real threat for democracy? Fake news is a true threat for democracy. Those people sitting there from the far left saying that we're a threat, those are the people who are threatening democracy. Those are the people who are actually threatening Western values.
Why don't you want to be called far right? Why is it such a big deal for you to say that you are not, that Vox is not a far right party?
Tessa, what's a big deal for us is to be called that we're threatening democracy. That's a big deal. And I've heard you say that. That's just unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Whether we're far right or not, we can debate on that issue. You can compare it to other parties in different parts of Europe. That's fine. That's part of the political debate, and that's not something that I would be especially appalled by. But some of the things that have been said there are just unacceptable. And I will never accept communists or green giving us democracy lessons. It just doesn't work that way. They've been having the upper hand for too long, and that's what's changing. And yes, we are a threat for them. We're a threat for the extreme left. We're a threat for the extreme radical feminists. Of course we are.
Go ahead, Anna. Problem. But the question is that they put in question the domestic violence, the feminism, the historical memory, the education, some values that we have in all the state, a consensus. And they mention some issues that they are no acceptation by the general public and by the democratic consensus. Also, they use all the strategy in communication in fake news. And we know that the qualification is not made by me, it's made by the press, by the main press in Spain. And I think the main press in Spain is not extreme left or left. It's more right.
And my point would be, if there's any fake news, maybe it is on your position about Marine Le Pen, because from what I know, she is a big supporter of yours, and you guys are a big supporter of hers. And if that is the case, then it is fine to describe you as a right-wing party. And second of all, what we know about democracy, Yvonne, is that, yes, it is about, of course, representing the will of the people, but it is also, in European democracy, about protecting the rights of minorities. And some of your opponents would say that that is not what you guys are about.
Well, you're absolutely wrong, Darren. And I'm sorry to contradict you and to contradict your preconceived ideas of what we are. But you're absolutely, completely wrong. And what was been saying on this sofa is absolutely different from the reality. So this lady was saying that we are a threat for the so-called law of historical memory. Of course we are, because that's a law written by the extreme left that says that you can only think in a certain way. And there's just one way to interpret the history. Of course we are. We have to support the freedom of thought and the freedom of speech, and we should be able to interpret history the way we like, not the way the left is right. Of course we are against a law that is considering all men to be a threat to women for the fact that they're men.
All right.
Of course, you're supporting victims of domestic violence.
I'm afraid I'll have to wrap up this conversation. But thank you, Ivan, for jumping in there and giving your point of view. Indeed, we want to hear, all views, all voices. We can disagree. Thank you for your thoughts as well. All right, we have to move over to Italy now, where the founder of Italy's populist five-star movement has backtracked, in fact, on some of his controversial stances, and all in the name of science. Alex Morgan and our team in theCUBE have more on this story. Alex.
Science as a universal human value. How about that? Or something that needs defending. You don't disagree with science, you just don't understand it. Words you might not associate with Beppe Grillo. Let's not forget, he was the comedian, the founder of the five-star movement as well, who campaigned for many years against vaccines. He, in his comedy, made a lot of jokes about vaccines, saying it was all about big pharma making money. But certainly one of the figures who was very skeptical about vaccines. And now here he is signing up to a brand new pact. It's calling for science to be defended, for it to be spared misinformation for political purposes. Let's have a look at this. And this is the pact. It brings together figures like Beppe Grillo, the populist, and Matteo Renzi, the former prime minister. Very diverse politicians, brought together by Roberto Burioni. He himself, perhaps one of Italy's most famous scientists, who goes around debunking misinformation about vaccines. He does it quite bluntly on social, and he's certainly got quite a following. Why is this pact then so significant? Well, let's not forget, last year, record highs of measles in Europe. There's a mandatory vaccine in Italy, and yet not all children get it. So when you have a figure like Beppe Grillo coming round to back the vaccine science, to back scientists, that is a 180-degree turn. You'd almost get whiplash given how significant a turn that is. So earlier here on Euronews, we spoke to Mr. Buriani, the scientist who really galvanised support for this pact, and we asked him, how significant is it that you now have someone like Beppe Grillo signing alongside someone like Matteo Renzi? This is what he had to say to us.
This will have a huge impact because that particular political side has been a little bit, let's say, not completely firm in favor of science. Now, to see that the leader of that political party is taking a very strong and very firm position in favor of science, I think will be very, very important and very positive for us.
And let's just show you very quickly, this is the pact they've all signed up to. It's very detailed. It calls on science being something you cannot politicise. You either get the science or you don't. Speaking to Mr. Buriani, he said success for him would be that it is doctors, not politicians, who tell people what is and is not safe when it comes to vaccines. But Tessa, let's not forget, this isn't limited to Italy, the United States, the United Kingdom. A vast number of countries have seen anti-vaccine movements grow, especially on social, real, if you like, echo chambers where people amplify with a lot of emotion anti-vaccine narratives. Indeed, Mr. Grillo has been abused now online by people who used to back him, calling him a traitor to his beliefs. But either way, the hope that this pledge here will bring people together in Italy, at least in favour of science and taking the misinformation and the politics out of it.
All right, thank you for that, Alex and our team in the Cube in Lyon. Now, still to come on Raw Politics, what says welcome like a pair of wooden shoes? That Raw moment is coming up. Don't go away. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, your call is coming up next, and we have Darren McCaffrey here, our political editor, and Linnea Engström joining us again, and our correspondent,
Shona Murray.
And so, what are we talking about?
That was a pretty lively show, so we're keen to hear what you've got to say. We want you to get in touch. We're going to be on air in the next couple of minutes with your call. So this is the way you can get in touch. You can drop us a line on 00800 333 3700 2, the old-fashioned telephone, or you can email us at rawpoll@euronews.com. You can get in touch via Twitter. Use the hashtag #RawPolitics, or indeed on Facebook, or Skype us just using Raw Politics. Today we are talking about Viktor Orban and his calls for kind of an anti-EU force and a focus on migration, for parties to band together the next European elections. Do you support that? And controversially, of course, there's Brexit payoff for these MEPs getting €9,000 a month.
Shona, what do you want to hear from people tonight?
Yeah, when they hear what MEPs, especially those agitating for the UK to leave the EU, are going to be paid. Sure. I know it's no different to what any other MEP gets when they end their mandate, but it might stick in the craw of those who are saying, oh my God, you're taking more money from the European taxpayer and you've been critical and not very constructive as an MEP all your time. And then, of course, Viktor Orban, in 2015, the peak of the refugee crisis, we had states trying to come together to do something positive about the refugee crisis. A lot of topics
that would, get people reacting. So do pick up that phone and call us right after the show, your call. All right, before we go, though, let's go to Amsterdam for tonight's Raw Moment, because the European Medicines Agency is moving there from London due to, you guessed it, Brexit. And upon arrival, the agency's chief was given a handy gift to help him feel right at home. Let's take a look. Nice gift to get, no, Linnea?
We also have clogs in Sweden, and we want that agency.
Does it look like that?
Well, kind of. They're smaller and a bit.
I'm one of those people that
Swedish
walking through Amsterdam, you see them everywhere, and I'm always so tempted to buy them. I may do next time, actually. Quite fashionable, aren't they?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for watching us tonight on Raw Politics. You can always follow me on Twitter at Tessa Ercilia or at Euronews and use the hashtag Raw Politics. Don't forget to stay with us, pick up that phone, and call your call.